Hello everybody, welcome. I'm No02. I'm going to be talking about movement tech in Back 4 Blood. Up-to-date movement tech. Before certain updates, before, you were able to like sprint jump and not burn stamina when you did that, and that was super duper fast and stamina efficient and things like that. But I'm talking about current update move tech. What's the fastest movement? How you should be managing your stamina. Little nuanced things like that. I'm also going to be talking about cross trainers versus superior cardio, which I think those two cards, as far as the movement speed stamina world, those are probably the best two cards. But I always prefer cross trainers over superior cardio. I'm going to talk about specifically why cross trainers is better than superior cardio, and how the nuanced movement that we can take advantage of in this game benefits greatly from cross trainers versus superior cardio. I'll talk about that at the end. Just the basics here, right? When you run, when you hold down the sprint key, you burn stamina, right? We all know that. Now, if you sprint and jump, it burns about half of a stamina bar to do the sprint jump. You're sprinting, jump, it's about half of a stamina bar, roughly. Each of the stamina bars is 25 points of stamina. We sprint jump, half a stamina bar. The important thing about sprint jumping is momentum. As you can see, we're jogging right now. No sprinting being done. We're jogging. And we're sprinting. Right, so when we're jogging and we jump, there's not a whole lot of difference in our movement speed. It's about the same. If we're sprinting and we jump, we carry the momentum of our sprint into the jump. So for the duration of that jump, we are moving at sprinting speed, and which is why the game devs had the mechanic of sprint jumping burning extra stamina, because we're traveling further by sprint jumping, so they have us burn extra stamina to help us compensate.
Yeah, I see it now.
What's faster though? Just sprinting? A full stamina bar? Well, like, what allows you to go further? A full stamina bar of sprinting, or sprint jumping an entire bar of stamina? It was believed, for the most part, that sprint jumping was an inefficient way to use your stamina. We're 50 meters away from this thing. We'll just hold down the sprint key, see how far we get. Alright, we're just sprinting, full sprint bar. 9 meters.
There.
Travel 41 meters with a full bar of stamina, right? This is base movement speed, 600 movement, right? All the weapons have the same sprint speed on them. It doesn't matter. I mean, we're testing the same, sprint jumping versus sprinting, so the weapon doesn't really matter because we're just comparing the two movements. We got our lineup here. Crosshair right on that beam.
See that?
50 meters away. Same target, right? Thing again. And we're going to sprint jump. And if you do the sprint jump correctly, burning the optimal amount of
over there
stamina, that right there wasn't the most optimal. You can actually go 48 meters with 100 points of stamina if you burn the stamina optimally. But as you can see
that?
We traveled a little bit further. We went from 41 meters to 44 meters. Right? Small nuance differences here, right? Small nuance differences. And if you mess up the jump, because if you are sprint jumping, it's all about carrying the momentum of our movement. So if you sprint jump too soon on landing, you don't go anywhere and you burn all your stamina. You don't go anywhere. So there is a rhythm to it, where when you land, you need to sprint for a step or two to rebuild, to maintain all your momentum, and then you jump again. But as far as I can tell, if you're on a flat surface, flat-ish enough, this isn't super duper flat, not the greatest place, right? But for the most part, under some circumstances, I'll say sprint jumping is the most efficient way to get from point A to point B as fast as possible using your stamina bar. But it is a little circumstantial. Takes a little bit of rhythm, and of course and when I'm sprint jumping, I'm letting go of the sprint key when I'm in the air and then holding it again when I land and things like that. Elevation, though, plays a big part in this. If you're going downhill, sprint jumping is way, way faster, way, way more stamina efficient, just because we have more hang time. And all of that hang time maintains the momentum that we had when we're sprinting. If you're going uphill, though, it's the inverse. If you're going uphill and you're sprint jumping, you're probably losing some meters. You're probably losing some distance because you're not getting the normal hang time that you would, right? So this, I think, is super duper exciting. I literally just spent an hour testing and running around and sprinting back and forth and measuring meters, just trying to confirm it. As far as I can tell, if you sprint jump correctly, as efficiently as possible, sprint jumping is slightly faster, or will allow you to travel slightly further than if you just regular sprint. It's not faster because it's the same movement speed either way, but while we're in the air, we burn that stamina on the sprint jump, and then we travel X amount of distance. That distance we travel while from jumping is more distance gained than if we were to just sprint it regularly. And that's where the stamina efficiency is coming from. There is another nuanced thing about this, right? So when we're sprinting, we sprint jump, it is about half of a stamina bar. It's about half of a stamina bar to sprint jump. Now, when we are underneath half of our final stamina bar, you can no longer sprint. You can no longer sprint. Oh, I just burned my stamina super fast here, right? Just so you can see. When we get to underneath half of the final stamina bar, I can no longer sprint. So I am spamming my sprint key here. But if we are underneath that halfway point of the final stamina bar, you can't sprint anymore. Yep. Now, if you are above the halfway point and you're sprinting into it, we can burn the entire bar of stamina by sprinting comfortably. Sprint jumping, right, takes half of a bar of stamina. So if we are sprinting into that final half of the bar and right at the end, too late, right? If we're sprinting right at the end and we jump, we can still do a sprint jump. We can still do that sprint jump, but instead of burning half of our stamina bar, it burns whatever's left in the stamina bar down to 0. So that is the most optimal stamina efficient thing you can do right there, is burn that final little chunk of stamina with the jump and maintain all of our speed. Now, of course, there is a delay in stamina regen. For the most part, stutter stepping, doing this, doesn't really affect too much. You can really emphasize it by just spamming it, which no one does. No one plays like that, right? For the most part, it's not a big deal to stutter step. It is important to note, though, when we are under pressure, when it comes to this delay for stamina regen. If we are under pressure and we're running away from zombies, right? We're running away from zombies. My play style, very speed clutchy. I always want to have this nice solid foundation of movement speed, because so long as I have my legs, I can beat most of the missions. I can do it with only 3 cards and and the rest of the deck is built for doing whatever. Important to remember, though, when we're sprinting, for the most part, we're faster than all the zombies. Sprinting zombies can keep pretty good pace with you if you're sprinting, which is where the extra movement speed comes in handy and things like that. So if we're sprinting, we're getting distance. If we're not sprinting, zombies are catching up. And if we want to be able to infinitely loop hordes and hordes and hordes of zombies, it's important to remember that if we are not sprinting, things are catching up. So if we want to make the most efficient time, we want to take advantage of our time when not sprinting. So if we're under pressure being chased by zombies and we stop sprinting, you need to at least give your stamina bar a little bit of time to regenerate, even if it's just a little bit. Because if you sprint and stop and then sprint and stop and sprint and every moment where you're just walking, that's an opportunity for zombies to catch up. And that opportunity, and that time when zombies are catching up to you, and you're not generating stamina bar, that's basically wasted time. Again, nuanced. None of this is like super critical for the most part and things like that, right? But it's little nuanced things where you can save a little meter here or there by just having the discipline to let your stamina bar regenerate just a little bit. Because that distance gained on you by the running zombies, if the zombies are getting distance on you, gaining on you because you're walking or jogging, you regenerate a little bit of extra stamina, that's an extra sprint jump or an extra half a second of sprinting that you can do. That distance that they gain on you is then compensated for by that tiny bit of stamina regen. That's the point I'm trying to make. Another thing to note too is that we climb faster than zombies for the most part. I think on these like half ledges, you climb them slightly faster than like full grapples, but it feels pretty much the same. When it comes to zombies having to jump both hands and pull themselves up, we do that way faster than they are. So things like this height, that truck over there, those are great opportunities for you to regenerate stamina because we can mantle on top of them, still get distance, slow them down because they climb slower than us. The distance of going vertical is almost always in our favor. Verticality that we can reach is always in our favor. Verticality that we can't reach and zombies spawn from obviously is never good for us. One important thing to note though is that if you're sprinting and you jump, you burn stamina, but if you're sprinting and you mantle, it counts as a jump. Sprinting and mantling burns stamina as if you were jumping. So to keep that in mind, if you're sprint jumping and you accidentally mantle something and you don't get your distance, that's a huge loss of stamina. Huge loss of distance. Also too, like I said, these are great opportunities to rebuild stamina. So typically what I like to do is I'm sprinting towards a thing, and right when I get to it, I stop sprinting and jump. Stop sprinting, jump into it. Because now that we stop sprinting, our stamina bar will regenerate while we're mantling. While we're gaining that vertical distance and not holding our sprint key, we're regenerating stamina and still covering good ground as far as versus what's chasing us. But if you hold down the sprint key and mantle, you burn stamina for everything, and it's not stamina efficient as far as distance traveled. So sprint up to things, stop sprinting, and then you can just mantle. Great way to save stamina while still gaining distance on things that are chasing you. The other thing I wanted to talk about in this video is just cross trainers versus superior cardio. So when it comes to just straight up sprinting like this, superior cardio will let you go further than cross trainers will. Just because cross trainers and superior cardio give the same amount of stamina, but the sprint efficiency means that your stamina bar will last longer while sprinting. It is important to note though, and this is part of the reason why I like cross trainers more than superior cardio. It's because of sprint jumping. That sprint efficiency does not apply to the sprint jump. Sprint jumping still costs roughly the same amount of stamina, or costs the same amount of stamina, regardless of our sprint efficiency. And with sprint jumping already being, for the most part, better, or the most efficient thing that we can do for our stamina bar, superior cardio doesn't really help us in that field if we're constantly sprint jumping. Now, if you watch my gameplay, I am not sprint jumping all the time, everywhere, every second. It's a lot of finger keys and finger presses, and it hurts, and sometimes I don't want to do it, and most of the time it's not even needed. It's a little bit of an overkill sort of thing. For the most part, you'll just see me sprint jump that final bit. If you don't want to sprint jump an entire bar of stamina, but you still want to be cool and a little extra efficient, just sprint jump that final chunk of your bar. I would say just do that. That's more than enough for the most part. especially if you don't want to kill your pinky as you have to constantly rhythmically tap your sprint key over and over again. Find shift. If yours is not shift, I don't know what you're doing. Right, so superior cardio, when it comes to just straight up sprinting, obviously more distance over time. But keep in mind, all this data that I've showed you in the test area here in the shooting range, we don't have any extra effects, no bonus movement speed and things like that. Having extra movement speed doesn't increase the cost of sprint jumping. Doesn't increase the cost of sprint jumping. But having more movement speed means that we have more momentum. So that when we do our sprint jumps, we go further. We have more momentum. We travel further, faster. So movement speed, though, right? Contrary to sprint efficiency, which does not help sprint jumping, movement speed helps sprint jumping quite a bit. Quite a bit. Not only that, the base movement speed also helps with our jogging and things like that overall, and etc. So when it comes to sprint jumping, cross trainers, way better. Huge, way better, and etc. Plus, we're still getting the extra stamina, and etc. I've also mentioned that stamina regen is more user-friendly. More user-friendly. And if you're not interested in sprint jumping, then the sprint efficiency is probably more user-friendly. But what I really mean by more user-friendly as far as stamina regen goes is that, remember, if you're doing the sprint jumping wrong, you're wasting stamina. If you're sprint jumping into grappling something, you're wasting stamina. If you're stutter stepping your sprint, chances are you're probably wasting stamina. When you are in that oh crap situation and you're all out of stamina, what's going to save you is the stamina regen. If you're making little stamina mistakes, when you do get that opportunity to start regenning, you regen that much faster. And I just find that if you're making mistakes, the stamina regen is what's going to save you sometimes. What's also super duper critical though about that sprint is about the stamina regen is this last bar of stamina. Right, so we can sprint jump that final bit of stamina on our stamina bar. And that's technically the most efficient movement that we can do as far as stamina spent. But we can't do that until we have that half a bar, because we can't sprint again until our final bar of stamina hits that 50% mark. If we have more stamina regen, that bar refills faster. So if you're looking for the most efficient, fastest way to constantly keep things off your back and things like that, stamina regen is going to allow you to do the sprint jump faster. Cross trainers will let you do this final bar of stamina sprint jumping 20% faster, technically, right? And that's something that superior cardio really doesn't affect at all. So that's why I like cross trainers overall, just because the stamina regen is just more convenient. If you're mismanaging your stamina, you get it back faster. And when it comes to jumping and grappling, which are the two main things that cause you to mismanage your stamina, sprint efficiency has nothing to do with that. Plus, if you're sprint jumping or not, or just doing that final bar sprint jump, the movement speed helps with that. And even if you're not, the flat movement speed increases your jogging speed as well. Or if you're going to jump off of something really high, even if you're not sprinting and jumping off of it, that base movement speed increase will help you go further and do it faster. Which is why I always recommend cross trainers over superior cardio. If you're not going to do anything involving jumping and you're just going to sprint, then distance-wise superior cardio is better. But I think you should incorporate a tiny bit of jumping here or there, and use verticality to your advantage so that your regen is protected. I don't know. Well, I don't know where I was going with that sentence. So, in recap, sprint jumping, most efficient thing you can do, especially if you're going downhill. If you're going uphill, not the case. Don't sprint in mantle because you'll waste stamina, and etc. Verticality is your friend. Cross trainers is better than superior cardio. and etc. Thank you guys for watching this video. I appreciate it, and I'll see you in the future.